Inside the murderous mind of Osama bin Laden, we look at newly released information about what the terror leader was doing and planning before he was killed. This is Special Report. Good evening, welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. We're learning more tonight about how the most wanted terrorist in the world spent his last years holed up, but still personally and meticulously involved in his extremist crusade, and much more in control and in communication with his terrorist network than we were led to believe. Newly released data depicts Osama bin Laden as a paranoid micromanager who was still hoping for another big hit against the U.S. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has the specifics.
After years of hiding in his Pakistan compound, the al-Qaeda leader, through documents released today, is portrayed as deeply obsessed with striking the U.S. On the 19 hijackers, Osama bin Laden writes they are not, quote, exceptional freaks of history, but are the vanguards of a nation that rose up for jihad, and there are millions of their brothers eager to seek the same path. In a recent intelligence budget, language inserted by Republicans mandated the document's declassification and public release. But critics emphasize another 1.5 million remain.
I think it's mainly a political calculation at this point and less to do with security or operational concerns.
From Yemen to North Africa and the Middle East, the al-Qaeda leader comes across as a micromanager, determined to remain relevant, issuing orders on media outreach, negotiating for European hostages, and vetting suicide bombers. In this document, applicants are asked for emergency contact information in the event they are martyred.
He was definitely in control.
The former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Mike Flynn, recently told Bret Baier bin Laden was not disconnected from reality, as the Obama administration suggested after the raid.
He was attempting and communicating with members of the wider al-Qaeda leadership team.
On the 2011 Arab Spring, bin Laden celebrates the overthrow of dictators while trashing U.S. policy in Libya, singling out Hillary Clinton. Quote, the Secretary of State declared that they are worried about the armed Muslims controlling the Muslim region. The West's position towards the Libyan revolution is a weak one. The Western countries are weak and their international role is regressing. As al-Qaeda in Iraq, the precursor to ISIS, butchered Muslims in 2007, bin Laden's lieutenants call on him to intervene and discipline the group. While the documents still seem relevant today, Flynn, who left the DIA in 2014, says the White House shelved them.
Why would top Obama administration officials want to stop the analysis?
I don't know. I mean, you don't stop exploiting intelligence. You never stop exploiting intelligence.
Tonight, U.S. officials disputed the number of documents, saying thousands, not over a million, were recovered. And the release came today because of a timetable laid out by Congress. It was not in response to recent reporting on the raid, and the decision to give BuzzFeed and the French wire service AFP an advance look was coordinated by the White House. Bret.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, you heard a little bit from the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Michael Flynn, the head of the DIA in the Obama administration. Here's more from that interview about the UBL documents. We've been told there are between 1 million and 1.5 million documents that were collected at the UBL compound in Abbottabad. Is that roughly true?
That's fair.
So that preliminary scrub lasts about 3 months?
Yeah, about 3 months, probably into about June or so.
And then, according to the reporting of the Wall Street Journal, the documents went unexploited for a long stretch of time.
Yeah, for probably, I would say some number of months. It could have been as much as a year.
But why would top Obama administration officials want to stop the analysis?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you don't stop exploiting intelligence.
But your conclusions, your assumptions, were not tracking with what was coming out publicly with the Obama administration.
They were no longer assumptions. They were facts.
Went on to say that Osama bin Laden had command and control. The organization was expanding, not contracting, and that what was coming out publicly from the Obama administration was diametrically opposed to what he saw in those documents and what the intelligence community was telling the Obama administration. Let's get your reaction to what we just heard and about these newly released UVL documents from Steve Hayes, senior writer from the Weekly Standard, and Tom Jocelyn of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. They're in New York tonight. These are two guys who have been on this story from the very beginning. Tom, I want to start with you. You heard a little bit from Mike Flynn about this. First, about these documents today, what we're learning about them. Obviously, it's very small if the total number is 1 to 1.5 million documents.
Yeah, we're just seeing a small subset of what was captured in the compound. Remember, that larger number reflects a lot of different types of documents, including documents that were translated by al-Qaeda and that bin Laden and his top lieutenants commented on, including writing in the margins. So there's a lot in ththose files that's interesting and has to be exploited and really released to the public. I'd say what was released today definitely did not include the juiciest or the most interesting documents that we would be interested in getting to the public. In fact, the most interesting stuff in the release today had previously been released in a court in Brooklyn in February or even before that. So I think a lot of the most interesting stuff remains behind a classified wall.
Steve, your thoughts today?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if you think about the comments that Mike Flynn made to you, I think he said some pretty explosive things there. He said, for one thing, the documents, when untouched, unexploited, he thought for perhaps up to a year. If that is true, that is criminal negligence by the intelligence community. How can you have this kind of information, the kind of information that our uniformed military routinely risk their lives to get, sit unexploited for that length of time? And that's what Mike Flynn, whose analysts were trying to get at it, just told you. I think the other thing that Mike Flynn said was that, in effect, the arguments that he was making that were coming out of the documents contradicted the main claims from the Obama administration in 2012. The Obama administration had said way back when they released the first tranche of documents in May of 2012 that Osama bin Laden was a lion in winter, that he wasn't really active. Well, you heard from Catherine Herridge, you heard from Mike Flynn that he was micromanaging these things. He was in contact with his affiliates on a regular basis. He was determining what attacks they would participate in, how they would operate. That's significant information. I think we certainly need to learn more. We need to get more than 120 documents out of a million.
Well, let me get to some of the juicy stuff that Mike Flynn talks about. He's very careful about not to go into classified information. It is not a part of this tranche that has been released, but it deals with al-Qaeda and Iran.
There's no way that you could operate inside of Iran as a senior member of al-Qaeda and move around freely and communicate the way they were communicating without the Iranian knowledge. I mean, there's just no way. And I know that, to be the case. And so I would just say that they were supporting or enabling the operations in Iraq and Afghanistan.
In these documents, though, General, there are connections between al-Qaeda and Iran.
Absolutely.
Deep connections?
Yeah, I mean, if they're allowing a guy to conduct, to enable command and control of al-Qaeda in Iraq on behalf of al-Qaeda senior leaders, yeah, I mean, I would say that that's a fair description.
Tom, that's explosive, in considering where we are with Iran especially.
Well, it's explosive, but it's not altogether surprising. Remember, the Obama administration, since July 2011, both the Treasury Department and the State Department have routinely said that Iran and al-Qaeda have an existing deal that allows al-Qaeda to use Iranian soil as a facilitation network. Now, what's interesting here about the documents that have been released to date is I think that they have sort of been cherry-picked to basically emphasize the antagonistic episodes between Iran and al-Qaeda. Now, those clearly happen. There are clearly areas of tension and clearly areas where they're at odds with one another. However, we know that there's a wealth of evidence that shows that they're actually colluding and have colluded for a number of years. Those documents conspicuously have not been released to date.
Quickly, Steve, I mean, this obviously begs more document release and more looking into this connection.
Yeah, and quickly, I think. I mean, look, we're in the context of nuclear negotiations with Iran. We should know everything we can possibly know about the nature of the Iranian regime. And if it's true, as Mike Flynn suggests, and I think it is, that there was this relationship that Iran has abetted and helped al-Qaeda senior leaders over the years, we certainly ought to know that that's very relevant to the nuclear negotiations.
Tom, Steve, great job on this story. Thanks for coming in tonight. We'll have much more later with the panel. Up next, Republican presidential hopefuls try to turn the tables on criticism over the Iraq War. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. KKFX in Santa Barbara with oil floating off the Central California coast after a spill from a broken pipe. Officials say it now stretches about 9 miles. The Coast Guard says vessels have deployed 3 sets of floating booms to try to keep the slicks from spreading, while other boats are skimming oil from the ocean surface west of Santa Barbara. Fox 4 in Dallas with severe weather prompting multiple water rescues due to flooding. Authorities say at least 1 tornado touched down, damaging several houses and apartment buildings. And this is a live look at Boston from our affiliate out there, Fox 25. The big story there tonight, a cruise ship bound for Boston that ran aground off Bermuda yesterday is back on course. We told you about it last night. Workers repaired the Norwegian Dawn steering system, which had malfunctioned, forcing the ship onto a reef. For their troubles, passengers get a 15% discount on a future cruise. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.